Our top story: despite an aggressive campaign by the BJP, the government has so far refused to cancel the allocation of 142 coal blocks that have come under the critical scanner of the Comptroller and Auditor General for irregularities in how licenses were given. But now an interministerial panel set up by the Coal Ministry itself could recommend that dozens of companies lose their coal licenses for failing to develop mining in these coal blocks. Sources say the draft report prepared by the panel recommends that these cancelled licenses then be handed over to the public sector undertaking Coal India. Though only some of the firms under review are the same ones named in the CAG report, and the decision would not be connected to allegations of wrongdoing at the allotment stage. Any cancellation could raise, however, more questions about the efficiency of the coal policy. Cancellation notices were sent to 58 coal firms in April this year.
The BJP has already said that the NDTV's report that the government's own interministerial panel actually says that companies which have not performed should lose their licenses is a vindication of the BJP's position that something is rotten in the UPA's coal policy. Congress sources, on the other hand, while not reacting officially to our report, are unofficially making the argument that, look, the Prime Minister said in his own speech in Parliament that where companies are found to be non-performing, action will be taken against them, and that's exactly what's happening here. So you're absolutely right that it can be argued both ways, but I will say that although the show cause notices for cancellation were sent to 58 firms as early as April, the timing coming as it does with the final report to be placed before the country by the 10th or the 15th of September by this interministerial panel perhaps does not spell good news for the Congress, because in this environment the opposition is certainly going to turn around and say that the very fact that your own government panel has recommended the cancellation of dozens of coal licenses for non-performance means that something was wrong in the way that you were administering and executing your policy. What is also interesting is something that you referred to, and I'm just going to take you through this correspondence that we have here. These are 3 letters. These letters exchanged by the Coal Secretary of India, the Coal Secretary, the highest bureaucrat in the Coal Ministry, written to Zohra Chatterjee, the officer who actually heads this government panel that was set up to draft guidelines on the basis of which some companies should lose their licenses. Now, what is interesting is that in the first of his letters, S.K. Srivastava, the Coal Secretary, actually raises questions about why 2 particular companies, and these coal blocks, as it were, belong to Usha Martin and Jindal Power and Steel Limited. The Coal Secretary raised questions as to why these companies were recommended by the panel for de-allocation. Interestingly, Zohra Chatterjee then sends a detailed report back to the Coal Secretary on the 23rd of this month, making a very fundamental argument. She says that, look, while you appointed us to draft guidelines, there is already a very basic rule that where companies are underperforming, their licenses can be cancelled, and that's what we've done. She further adds that, look, we can only make suggestions. It's up to the ministry to accept them or reject them. The Coal Secretary then writes another letter on the 27th of August. And this is a very important and interesting letter, Vishnu. In this letter, the Coal Secretary says, all right, we take the point of the interministerial panel as long as you list reasons for which a company is losing its coal license. But he goes on to say that the Prime Minister's office has expressed concern that the ministry has not initiated enough action against those companies to which show cause notices were sent for underperformance. And he further directs the interministerial panel to expedite matters on a priority. Reading between the lines, what does it mean? That the PMO, in the wake and the backdrop of the storm, is now saying, please hurry up and deallocate the licenses to those 58 companies to which show cause notices were sent. So you can expect a lot of developments on this over the next week.
Sandeep, are there any reactions coming into this at all? We've seen the Congress being largely silent on this. The BJP believes that this adds fuel to the fire as far as the overall scam, if one can use that phrase, is concerned. But what is the Congress now saying?
Vishnu, as Barkha was trying to explain, that so far the Congress is very cautious and guarded in its response. They don't want to jump into any kind of pronouncement before actually Parliament meets next week. I think their focus is really to break the Parliament logjam. But the BJP, on the other hand, they have been reacting to the NDTV story. BJP speaker after speaker, MP after MP have spoken and said that, look here, this is actually a vindication of what we said. It indicates the fact that the coal ministry itself is undertaking an exercise to see who are the non-performers, indicates that wrong people were chosen to give away the coal blocks, which is a national resource. The other argument, Vishnu, which has been made, and it's an extremely important argument that a senior leader made, privately to me, he didn't want to be quoted. He said that, look here, all along the government has been arguing that one reason why they did not go for competitive bidding was because, there were political differences. Notably, the left was opposed to auction in the first place. Then they had other reservations about the competitive bidding process. Letters were exchanged, etc., etc. So to build political consensus, they would have had to spend more time. The government's argument was that coal is important for the country's economic growth, for the infrastructure industry, steel, cement and power plant, and that's why they had to allocate these coal blocks at the earliest possible instance so that it does not hamper economic growth and development. Now you have a situation where after 4 years, 5 years since these coal blocks have been allocated, companies even haven't started work on these coal blocks, which means that the very purpose for which you gave away these coal blocks without the auction route has been defeated. So in some ways, the government's argument that they did not have time to wait for a political consensus has been punctured. Quite clearly, this is a political, this is going to be a political battle in the next week as Parliament reconvenes. Before that, I tried to actually speak to the CPIM General Secretary Prakash Karat and asked him about the political differences. Is there a way out? Let's listen in what he actually had to say, Vishnu, on the issue of why the left has not really demanded, like the BJP, why they have not demanded the resignation of the Prime Minister, and what is their demand, primary demand?
After all, after the investigation, that we can pinpoint the responsibility, fix the accountability, and then you can take action. If X, Y or Z is responsible, even if it is the Prime Minister, then you can say the Prime Minister has to step down. But let the inquiry take place.
Meanwhile, the BJP continues to attack the government, specifically the Prime Minister, over the issue. Reacting to the NDTV story, Ravi Shankar Prasad said it raises serious questions about the entire decision-making process of the government.
The PM office was hyperactive. I'm only reading 2 + 2 = 4. There was a saga of irregularities being committed. Some have been show-caused earlier, others have been found. Bounty was given when the competitive bidding policy was deliberately delayed, and 145 blocks in 3 years.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app. Fully optimized for retina display. Full screen view. Faster response time. And Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.